When the stars went silent, the crystal spires of Nexera Prime had stood for 10,000 years, their translucent surfaces catching the light of 3 suns and scattering it into rainbows that danced across the peaceful cities below. The Zephyrians had built their civilization on harmony, their telepathic abilities allowing them to share thoughts and emotions across vast distances. War was a concept they had studied, but never truly understood. Peace was their nature, their gift to the galaxy. HFY stood in the highest tower of the council chamber, his elongated form trembling as waves of terror flooded through the planetary consciousness. His people's mental voices, usually a gentle chorus of shared wisdom, now screamed in unified panic. The sky above Nexera Prime was burning. The Shadow Fleet had come without warning, emerging from the void between stars like nightmares given form. Their ships were wrong somehow, not built but grown, organic curves that hurt to look at directly. They moved through space with purpose that felt ancient and terrible, consuming everything in their path. Entire star systems had gone silent over the past months, their signals simply ending mid-transmission. Council leader, whispered Nexera, her mental voice barely audible through the chaos. Our defense fleet. They're gone. All of them. The shadows tore through our energy barriers like they were made of air. HFY reached out with his consciousness, trying to touch the minds of their defenders. He found only emptiness where brave souls had been moments before. The Zephyrian way of war, if it could be called that, relied on stunning attackers into submission, using their telepathic abilities to overwhelm hostile minds with peace and calm. Against the Shadow Fleet, their efforts had been useless. The creatures piloting those ships felt nothing, fought nothing that a Zephyrian mind could touch. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on 1,000 worlds. The Vorthans, ancient and proud, watched their mighty dreadnoughts crumble before weapons that seemed to unmake matter itself. Their warrior code, refined over millennia of honorable combat, meant nothing against an enemy that felt neither honor nor fear. The crystalline Nexeri, masters of energy manipulation, found their most powerful abilities absorbed and turned back against them. Even the collective intelligence of the hive worlds, billions of minds working as one, could not predict or counter the Shadow Fleet's movements. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, representatives from hundreds of species gathering in the great chamber at the galaxy's heart. Fear filled the air like a physical presence as reports poured in from the outer sectors. System after system fell silent, their last transmissions always the same. Darkness rising from the void, ships that defied understanding, and then nothing. We must evacuate the core worlds, declared High Chancellor Vexnor, his usually calm demeanor cracking under the weight of impending doom. Pull back our fleets, establish defensive lines around the most populated systems, and abandon billions to die. Challenged Crixaton, the Vorthan representative. His scarred hide bore the marks of countless battles fought with honor. We are the guardians of civilization. We do not retreat. Guardians, laughed bitterly Silnera, the youngest member of the council. Her Nexeri form flickered with emotional distress, energy crackling around her fingertips. We're barely surviving contact with this enemy. Our combined fleets can't even slow them down. The debate raged for hours while more systems fell. Ancient wisdom clashed with desperate pragmatism, but no solution emerged. The Shadow Fleet moved with inexorable purpose, consuming everything in its path. Some species spoke of evacuation to distant galaxies, others of hiding in the cosmic void between stars. All of their options led to the same conclusion: the end of galactic civilization as they knew it. Meanwhile, in a small blue-green world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, humanity was just beginning to understand the scope of the crisis unfolding around them. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Luna Station, studying the garbled transmissions her teams had been intercepting for weeks. Earth's first contact protocols had always assumed aliens would announce themselves formally, perhaps with mathematical sequences or universal constants. Instead, Humanity's introduction to galactic civilization came through screams of terror broadcast across subspace frequencies. "Admiral, we're getting more signals," reported Lieutenant Zhang, his young face pale from hours of monitoring alien distress calls. Same pattern as before. Peaceful contact attempts, then combat reports, then silence. Elena nodded grimly. The pattern was clear even if the languages were incomprehensible. Something was systematically destroying advanced civilizations across the galaxy, and it was getting closer to Earth with each passing day. Humanity had been reaching for the stars for barely a century, their technology primitive compared to the energy signatures they detected in the alien transmissions. By any logical measure, they should be preparing for evacuation or surrender. Instead, Elena was planning the impossible. "Status report on the fleet," she commanded, turning to face her gathered officers. The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant vibration of construction work echoing through the station's hull. "All available vessels are being retrofitted according to Dr. Chen's specifications," replied Captain Morrison, his weathered face breaking into what might have been a grin or a grimace. "I won't lie, Admiral. The crews think we've all lost our minds. We're talking about taking fishing boats and cargo haulers against an enemy that's been eating advanced alien civilizations for breakfast." "Fishing boats with teeth," corrected Dr. Marcus Chen from his position at the science station. The xenobiologist had become humanity's leading expert on alien technology by default, studying every scrap of data they could intercept. If these readings are accurate, the alien weapons rely on sophisticated energy matrices that interact with conventional matter in predictable ways. Human technology is different. Crude. It might actually work where their advanced systems fail. Elena studied the tactical display showing Earth's hastily assembled fleet. Every human vessel capable of spaceflight had been pressed into service, from military cruisers to civilian transports. They were arming cargo ships with nuclear warheads and strapping rocket engines to mining platforms. By galactic standards, it was laughably primitive. But primitive didn't always mean ineffective. "Dr. Chen, explain to me again why you think this will work," Elena said, needing to hear the reasoning one more time before committing humanity to what might be its final act. Chen activated a holographic display showing the energy patterns they had detected from alien battles. "Every advanced civilization we've monitored uses some form of exotic energy manipulation. Plasma containment, quantum field generators, matter displacement. Their weapons and defenses are essentially controlled applications of universal forces." The display shifted, showing the crude but effective weapons humanity was installing on their ships. "Our weapons are different. Chemical explosives, kinetic penetrators, nuclear fission. We split atoms instead of rearranging them. We use brute force where they use elegance. If I'm right, their defenses won't know how to handle our approach." "And if you're wrong?" asked Captain Morrison. Chen's expression grew serious. "Then we die. But we die fighting, and maybe our deaths will give the aliens some useful data about this enemy." Elena looked around the room at the faces of her officers. She saw fear there, certainly, but also determination. Humanity had always thrived on impossible odds, had built their entire history on the principle that someone had to take the first step into the unknown. Today, that someone was all of them. "Signal all ships," she commanded. "We launch in 6 hours. Whatever's out there destroying civilizations, it's about to learn what happens when you threaten Earth." The human fleet that departed the Sol system was a patchwork of desperate improvisation and stubborn determination. 300 vessels of various sizes and capabilities, all carrying the same message painted on their hulls in dozens of human languages. "We stand with you." Elena had insisted on the message despite protests that aliens wouldn't understand it. She believed they would understand the intent, even if the words were foreign. The journey to the nearest distress signal took 18 days through hyperspace, humanity's experimental faster-than-light drive pushing their ships to the edge of structural integrity. When they dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Nexera system, they found a massacre in progress. The Shadow Fleet hung in space like a cancer, their organic ships pulsing with unnatural light as they systematically destroyed the remaining Zephyrian settlements. Nexera Prime burned in the distance, its crystal spires shattered and dark. Around the planet, the debris of the Zephyrian defense fleet drifted in slowly expanding clouds. "Jesus," whispered Captain Morrison from the bridge of the UES Defiance. "We're too late." But even as he spoke, sensors detected something impossible. Life signs were still registering from several of the damaged Zephyrian ships. The enemy wasn't just destroying their targets. They were taking their time, savoring the destruction. It was a mistake that would cost them dearly. "All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez." Elena's voice cut through the communication channels. "We didn't come this far to watch. Attack pattern Delta. Show them what humans do to bullies." The human fleet spread out in a formation that would have horrified any military academy instructor. No elegant lines or coordinated movements, just 300 ships charging in from different angles with weapons blazing. Nuclear missiles streaked toward Shadow Fleet vessels, while kinetic penetrators fired from improvised railguns sought gaps in alien defenses. The Shadow Fleet's response was swift and terrible. Energy beams that had effortlessly destroyed advanced alien ships lashed out at the human vessels. But something impossible happened. The beams, designed to interact with sophisticated energy shields and exotic matter, passed harmlessly through the crude steel and ceramic composites of human ship hulls. Where they should have found elegant quantum matrices to unravel, they found simple metal that absorbed the energy and converted it to heat. "Their weapons aren't working," shouted Lieutenant Zhang from his post aboard the Luna. "Whatever those beams are supposed to do, our ships are too primitive to be affected." Elena allowed herself a moment of fierce satisfaction before issuing new orders. "All ships, close to optimal range. Let's show them how humans fight." What followed was unlike any battle in recorded galactic history. Human ships, many of them civilian vessels with hastily mounted weapons, swarmed the Shadow Fleet like angry hornets. They used ramming attacks, nuclear mines deployed from cargo bays, and even welding torches modified into cutting beams. The Shadow Fleet, accustomed to the predictable patterns of advanced warfare, found themselves facing an enemy that followed no rules they understood. Captain Morrison's ship, the Defiance, closed to point-blank range with a shadow vessel twice its size. "This is for every world you destroyed," he growled, arming every nuclear warhead in his ship's improvised arsenal. The explosion lit up the system like a newborn star, taking both vessels with it, but creating a gap in the enemy formation. Across the battlefield, similar acts of desperate courage played out. Human crews, many of them civilians who had volunteered for a mission they didn't fully understand, fought with the kind of reckless determination that had carried their species from cave dwellings to the stars. They adapted their tactics moment by moment, turning their ships into weapons when their weapons failed, using their humanity as a strength where alien perfectionism had become a weakness. The Shadow Fleet began to retreat for the first time in their campaign of destruction. Their organic ships, damaged by weapons they had no defense against, pulled back toward the edge of the system. But the humans weren't finished. "Signal the survivors," Elena commanded as her damaged fleet regrouped around the wounded Zephyrian ships. "Tell them help has arrived. Tell them Earth stands with them." Among the wreckage of Nexera Prime's orbital defenses, Zephy felt something he had never experienced before. Through the chaos of battle, a new voice touched his consciousness. Not the elegant mental communication of his own people, but something raw and powerful. It carried images of a blue world under yellow sunlight, of creatures who built their civilization on conflict and cooperation in equal measure. Humans, they called themselves, and they had crossed the galaxy to fight beside strangers. As the Shadow Fleet disappeared into the cosmic dark, licking wounds they had never expected to receive, the galaxy began to realize that something fundamental had changed. The ancient balance of power, the careful order maintained by advanced civilizations for millennia, had been shattered by a species that didn't even know the rules they were breaking. And in the ruins of Nexera Prime, as human medical teams worked alongside Zephyrian healers to save lives, the first seeds of a new alliance were planted. An alliance built not on shared technology or common philosophy, but on the simple human principle that sometimes someone has to stand up to the bullies. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant when they said, "We stand with you." The thunder of hope. Word of humanity's impossible victory at Nexera spread through the surviving galactic networks like wildfire. The ancient races, those who had seen the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations, struggled to comprehend what had happened. How had a species barely capable of interstellar travel succeeded where their most advanced fleets had failed? The answer, when it came, would reshape their understanding of war, survival, and what it truly meant to be civilized. Dr. Marcus Chen found himself in the unprecedented position of serving as humanity's first galactic ambassador, a role he had never trained for but embraced with characteristic human adaptability. Standing in the rebuilt council chambers of Nexera Prime, surrounded by representatives from dozens of surviving species, he faced questions that challenged every assumption about technological superiority and military doctrine. "Impossible," declared High Chancellor Vexnor, his crystalline form flickering with disbelief. "Your weapons are primitive. Your tactics are chaotic. By every measure of galactic military science, you should have been destroyed in the first exchange." Chen smiled, a very human expression that somehow conveyed both humility and quiet confidence. "With respect, Chancellor, that's exactly why we won. You've spent millennia perfecting warfare into an art form, making it predictable and elegant. The Shadow Fleet learned to counter your perfection. They never learned to deal with our chaos." Crixeton, the scared Vorthan warrior, leaned forward with interest. Despite his initial dismissal of human capabilities, he had studied the battle recordings with growing respect. "Explain this chaos. How does disorder become strength?" "We improvise," Chen replied simply. "When our missiles couldn't penetrate their shields, we rammed them with cargo ships. When our energy weapons proved ineffective, we used mining charges and construction tools. We didn't follow a doctrine because we didn't have one. Every human captain made decisions based on what they saw in front of them, not on what some manual told them should work." Silnera, the young Nexari representative, spoke up from her position near the chamber's energy core. "But surely such random actions should have resulted in your defeat. Military history teaches us that coordination and planning are essential for victory. Military history is written by species that survived long enough to develop formal military traditions," Chen countered. "Humans developed differently. We've been fighting for survival since we first stood upright on our home world. We learned to adapt or die, and that mindset became part of our nature." The debate might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the outer monitoring stations. The message was brief and terrifying. The Shadow Fleet had not retreated to lick its wounds. Instead, it had gathered reinforcements and was moving toward the galactic core, apparently intent on ending the threat humanity represented before it could spread. Admiral Vasquez received the intelligence aboard her flagship while overseeing repairs to the human fleet. The damage from Nexera had been severe, with over half their vessels requiring major reconstruction. But the news from the galactic monitoring stations changed everything. "How many ships?" she asked Captain Morrison, who was studying the long-range sensor data with grim concentration. "Conservative estimate. 3,000 vessels," Morrison replied. "They're moving in a formation we haven't seen before. Looks like they've adapted their tactics to account for our unconventional approach." Elena nodded, her mind already working through the implications. The Shadow Fleet had learned from their defeat, just as humans learned from every conflict. The difference was that they had vastly superior numbers and resources. Humanity's advantage of unpredictability would be reduced if the enemy came prepared for chaos. "Signal the Galactic Council," she commanded. "Tell them we need every available ship and crew. It's time to see if our allies learned anything from watching us fight." The response exceeded even Elena's optimistic expectations. Across the galaxy, surviving civilizations began to mobilize in ways they never had before. The Zephyrians, despite their peaceful nature, offered their remaining ships and their unique telepathic coordination abilities. The Vorthons emerged from their fortress worlds with fleets that had been hidden for centuries, their warrior pride finally given a worthy cause. Even the fractured hive worlds temporarily merged their consciousness to contribute their biotechnology and collective intelligence. But it was the younger species, those who had been dismissed as primitive or insignificant by the galactic powers, who provided the most crucial support. The Korathi brought their expertise in stealth technology. The Trandeshi offered their knowledge of guerrilla warfare. The Beleni contributed their mastery of electronic warfare and system hacking. Within weeks, the largest combined fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of the Terminus Nebula, the last major obstacle before the galaxy's core worlds. It was a magnificent sight. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species, their different technologies and design philosophies creating a tapestry of unified purpose. Admiral Vasquez stood on the bridge of her rebuilt flagship, the UES Thunder, watching the massive fleet maneuver into position. Beside her, Dr. Chen served as the link between human tactical planning and alien expertise, translating concepts that often had no equivalent in different languages or mindsets. The Zephyrians report they can establish a mental link between ship commanders, Chen informed her. It won't be true telepathy for non-telepathic species, but it should allow for unprecedented coordination. And the Vorthons? Elena asked, noting the proud warriors maintained separate formations despite joining the alliance. They insist on leading the frontal assault. Something about honor demanding they face the greatest danger. Chen paused, then added with a slight smile. I think they're actually excited to fight alongside humans. They see us as kindred spirits. Elena chuckled. Kindred spirits who don't follow any rules they understand. Sometimes the best rules are the ones you make up as you go along, Chen observed. The other species are learning that. As if to prove his point, a communication came in from Silnera, now commanding a mixed squadron of Nexari and human vessels. Admiral Vasquez, we've been experimenting with combining our energy manipulation abilities with your kinetic weapons. The results are interesting. On the tactical display, Alina watched test firings from the hybrid squadron. Traditional human projectiles were being enhanced with Nexari energy fields, creating weapons that hit with devastating force while remaining fundamentally unpredictable. Other species were making similar innovations, combining their advanced technologies with human tactical thinking in ways that produced entirely new forms of warfare. The Shadow Fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly where the combined intelligence networks had predicted, their dark forms blotting out the stars. But this time, humanity and its allies were ready with something the galaxy had never seen: organized chaos. The battle began with the Vorthons charging forward in their traditional wedge formation, their honor guard eager to prove their worth against an enemy that had humiliated galactic civilization. But instead of the predictable clash of battle lines, the attack dissolved into controlled pandemonium as planned. Human vessels broke formation to support the Vorthons, but not in any pattern the Shadow Fleet could predict. Some ships dove underneath the battle plane, others climbed above it, while still others maintained seemingly random headings that brought them into optimal firing positions through routes no military computer could calculate. The Zephyrians, their telepathic network enhanced by human communication technology, coordinated the chaos in real time. Instead of rigid battle plans, they shared emotional impressions and tactical intuitions that allowed individual commanders to make split-second decisions based on the flow of battle. Shadow Fleet is trying to establish kill zones, reported Morrison from his position at the tactical station. Same energy weapon patterns as before, but deployed in overlapping fields. Signal all ships, Alina commanded. Execute Protocol Thunderstorm. What followed would be studied in military academies for generations. Instead of avoiding the kill zones, the combined fleet deliberately flew into them, but not in the way the Shadow Fleet expected. Human ships led the charge, their primitive construction allowing them to absorb energy attacks that would have destroyed more sophisticated vessels. Behind them came alien ships using human-inspired tactics, weaving unpredictable patterns that broke up the carefully planned kill zones. The Korathi used their stealth technology not to hide, but to appear suddenly in unexpected locations, their presence announced only by the nuclear explosions that followed. The Trandeshi employed hit-and-run tactics that had never been used in formal space warfare, striking at Shadow Fleet supply lines and support vessels. The Beleni turned the enemy's own coordination against them, hacking into Shadow Fleet networks and feeding false information that turned their formations into chaos. But it was the humans who provided the moment that turned the tide. Captain Lisa Park, commanding the experimental vessel UES Innovation, had spent the journey to the Terminus Nebula working on a theory that had been considered impossible by every alien physicist who reviewed it. "Admiral," her voice crackled through the communication system as her ship approached the Shadow Fleet's command vessel. "I'm reading massive energy buildups from their flagship. I think they're preparing some kind of superweapon." Elena studied the tactical display, watching as the Shadow Fleet's organic command ship began to pulse with unnatural light. Whatever they were preparing, it was clearly intended to end the battle in one devastating strike. "All ships, concentrate fire on the flagship," she ordered, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew it wouldn't be enough. The Shadow Fleet's command vessel was protected by layers of energy shielding that had already absorbed the combined firepower of dozens of ships without significant damage. "Negative, Admiral." Park's voice came back, calm despite the desperate situation. "I have a better idea. Remember what Dr. Chen said about the fundamental difference between our technology and theirs?" Belina suddenly understood. "Lisa, you're not seriously considering." "I am." Park's ship broke away from the main formation, accelerating directly toward the Shadow Fleet flagship. "They use controlled universal forces. We use brute force. Let's see what happens when an unstable human fusion reactor meets their elegant energy matrix." The UES Innovation was humanity's most experimental vessel, its power core a hybrid of human nuclear technology and alien energy manipulation techniques. It was also catastrophically unstable, held together by engineering solutions that violated several laws of physics. Park had been trying to stabilize it for months. Now she was going to make it as unstable as possible. "All ships, clear the area," Elena commanded, understanding what was about to happen. "Lisa, it's been an honor." "The honor's been mine, Admiral. Tell Earth we gave them hell." The Innovation disappeared into the heart of the Shadow Fleet formation, its trajectory taking it directly into the flagship's energy field. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the impossible occurred. The carefully controlled exotic energies that powered the Shadow Fleet's superweapon met the chaotic forces of a human fusion reactor in catastrophic meltdown. The explosion that followed rewrote the rules of physics. The Shadow Fleet's command vessel, designed to channel and control universal forces, found itself trying to contain energies that followed no pattern it could understand. The resulting chain reaction spread through their formation like a virus, their own interconnected systems carrying the chaos from ship to ship. In the aftermath, as the light faded and the debris settled, the Shadow Fleet was broken. Not just defeated, but fundamentally changed. Their perfect coordination was shattered, their elegant systems corrupted by contact with human chaos. They retreated not in order, but in panic, their hive mind fractured by an encounter with minds that thought in ways they could never predict. The Galactic Alliance had won, but the victory came with a price that weighed heavily on every survivor. Captain Park's sacrifice was mourned across the galaxy, her name added to monuments on 1,000 worlds. But her legacy was more than just heroic sacrifice. She had proven that sometimes the most elegant solution was no solution at all. Just the courage to act when action was needed. In the months that followed, as the galaxy began to rebuild, a new order emerged. The ancient hierarchies based on technological advancement gave way to alliances built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Humans found themselves not as conquerors or overlords, but as teachers and partners, sharing their gift for adaptive thinking with species who had forgotten how to innovate. Dr. Chen, now serving as Earth's permanent ambassador to the Galactic Council, often reflected on the changes humanity had brought to the stars. They hadn't conquered the galaxy through superior technology or overwhelming force. They had changed it by being themselves, chaotic, unpredictable, and absolutely unwilling to give up when others had lost hope. "The galaxy is safer now," he told Admiral Vasquez during one of their regular communications. "But more than that, it's more alive. The other species are learning to take risks again, to try new things, to be human in their own ways." Elena smiled at the phrase. Being human had become more than just a description of species origin. It had become a philosophy, a way of approaching the universe with curiosity instead of fear, with creativity instead of rigid adherence to tradition. As she looked out at the stars from her position aboard the UES Thunder, now serving as the flagship of the integrated Galactic Defense Force, Elena reflected on how far they had all come. The Shadow Fleet still lurked somewhere in the cosmic dark, but they were no longer the existential threat they had once been. The galaxy had learned to fight back, to adapt, to survive. And at the heart of it all was a simple human truth. When the darkness comes, someone has to stand up and turn on the lights. It didn't matter if you were ready, didn't matter if you had the perfect plan or the best equipment. What mattered was that you stood up anyway. The galaxy had learned to be human, and in doing so, it had learned to hope again. The stars no longer went silent when darkness threatened. Instead, they thundered with the voices of 1,000 worlds, united in their refusal to surrender, carrying the message that had started it all across the cosmic void. "We stand with you." And in the depths of space, that thunder echoed on, a promise that the galaxy would never again face the darkness alone.